Welcome to Selling in the Age of AI.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So,
Must-listen podcast for sales professionals who lean into technology without leaning on it. Dive into the future of sales with your host, the dynamic and inspiring Frank Somma, renowned keynote speaker, best-selling author, seminar leader, and business coach. Get ready for game-changing insights and strategies that value technology but place humanity at the top of the sales pyramid.
Benvenuti a tutti. Welcome everyone to Selling in the Age of AI, the podcast where we respect the tech but place human-to-human contact squarely at the top of the sales pyramid. I'm Frank Somma, and today I go full circle with the first motivational speaker I ever hired to speak to my sales team, Dr. Rob Gilbert. That day, Rob changed my life entirely. I watched him jazz up my sales team, and I wanted to be just like him. Luckily for me, Rob's as generous as he is brilliant, and he agreed to meet with me and give me some tips on how to get started as a professional speaker. I'm really proud to say that mentorship has never ended. I've relied on Dr. Rob for about 30 years for openers, closing stories, techniques, group exercises, you name it. If I have a gig coming up, I'm calling Rob and he's giving me advice. I can say with all candor that I would not be where I am or even who I am today had I not met Rob Gilbert. Please welcome the best motivational speaker I have ever seen, and a guy who I'm very, very happy I can call my friend, Dr. Rob Gilbert.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Welcome, Rob. You know, I have to say, I love the intro that you sent over to the team. It says, there are a lot of motivational speakers, and Rob Gilbert is one of them. That's brilliant. I love it. How you doing?
Everything's great. I'm excited to do this with you.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so excited. So, you know, what we do on this podcast is we really talk about the essential people skills. The reason that we began this is because so many professional salespeople got nervous over the idea that AI is, you know, blossoming as it is, and am I going to be replaced? And I'm wondering what's happening in your brain when I say people are worried about AI replacing them. What would you say to them?
Well, it must have been 30 or 40 years ago, and I haven't heard these four words since. High tech, high touch. Remember when the computer, everybody said high tech, high touch? The more technological, the more, and it's even more so now. The more technological, you know, what do I want? I want to speak to a person. I mean, I love the technology, but I want a person too. You know, the person and technology is great. The technology by itself, in my age, is lacking. So high tech, high touch. So the more technological, the more we need people skills.
So, and you know, Rob, when you see you've interacted with tons of salespeople, what kinds of things do you find that are in common with people that are really good at it?
Really good at sales?
Yeah. What do you think they possess? Like, is there a thread that goes through the great ones?
Well, I think it's a common denominator for whether it's sales or athletics or I had a woman in my class yesterday, Dr. Melissa Sapia, who's the only student I know that graduated from Montclair State with a perfect 4.0. She has it. It's hunger. You have to have a hunger. So very simply, the sentence is, I want that. If you could just figure out what your that is, you know?
Yeah.
And then if you want to take it to the next level, I really want that. So if you could figure out what you really, really want. So this is a Friday morning, and I have students at Montclair State, and some of them will party this weekend, and some of them won't. The people who really, really want to get into medical school won't party this weekend. The people who really do will. The people who want to be state champions will train. So it's very simple. Figure out what you really, 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 really want, and then find a great coach and train like a maniac. So whether you want to get a 4.0, whether you want to become a state champion, or whether you want to make several $1 million in sales, it's so simple to say. It might not be that easy to do, but I guess what? It's fun to do.
It is difficult to do, and that's an interesting thing to talk about because I know you're super good at figuring that out. How do I get that discipline? Like, let's say I decide I want to be really rich. Now, a lot of people enter sales and they say, I want to make $500,000 in this job this year. And then
Yeah.
they don't. Why?
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book a couple of years ago. It was Dr. Gilbert's one-word book on how to be extremely successful in sports, school, or sales. So Dr. Gilbert's one-word book. So it didn't take me long to write the book because it's only one word. And the one word is extreme. You have to be extreme. I mean, you have to do things other people won't do.
Right.
So probably the greatest Greco-Roman wrestler ever was from the Soviet Union, a guy named Alexander Karelin. And he was like 6'3", 285 pounds. I think he won a decade with never losing. And behind his back, people called him the experiment because they were sure he was taking drugs. You know, how could you be 6'4", 6'5", 285 pounds with 5% body fat and not take drugs?
Right.
And so one day a courageous sports writer said, Mr. Karelin, what do you think about your competitors that call you the experiment? He said, I'll tell you the drug I take. It's called training. Then he said, I train more every day than my opponents will train any day. So I train more every day. So you're a student. Study more every day than your other students will study the night before the exam. And there won't be any competition. Now, you might be saying, well, I do that. Well, if you're working hard, you need a mentor. So last weekend, I spent 50 hours with a Tony Robbins Zoom seminar. And he told a pretty interesting story that he had a mentor that he said, the guy's always giving it, I guess it's mostly business advice. And one day this guy calls him up and he says one word to him, polo. And Tony says, what? Polo. He said, you have to take up polo. He said, polo? I've never been on a horse. What do you mean polo? So Tony trusted this guy enough that he started playing polo. And he became, in his league, he became the rookie of the year. So he used this story to say, how do you master something? He said, step one, you have to find a model. You have to model somebody. And you know NLP, so you know what I'm talking about. But you can't have a good model. If you have a good model, you never get better than good. You have to have a world-class model. So Tony found a world-class polo player. And I'm sure it helped that he was Tony Robbins, and the guy spent a lot of time with him. So step number one, find a world-class model. Step number two, total immersion. You don't just say, okay, we'll have a lesson once every week. You know, when I coach people, I just don't understand psychologists and life coaches that when I coach somebody, I meet with them every single day. You know, every single day. When I coach people, like when I was a wrestling coach, every single day. Right. So you have to totally immerse yourself. So if I took all your money and all your idea away from you, and I know you're learning Italian, but suppose you also want to learn Spanish, and we plunked you in the middle of Mexico City, you learn Spanish pretty quickly,
100%.
You know?
Yep.
So number one, world-class role model. Number two, total immersion. Then number three, spaced repetition. You have to start training for 10, 20, 30,000 hours. But you have to do a little, a lot, not a lot, a little. So yeah, just like any high school, 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day.
Okay, so how do I go about finding a mentor? There are people that are going to listen and say, well, that's great. You know, Tony Robbins finds a world-class polo player. Yeah. I'm just Frank Somma, little baby sales guy over here. Okay. Where do I find
So if I'm a little baby sales guy, you know who I want to find Frank Somma. Right. I want you, you know, and I'm sure you have your price. I'm sure you sell, you know. So the people are out there. I don't want to brag, but I'm not a world-class sales trainer. I'm a world-class coach for students. I don't think anybody knows more about college success than I do because I know about college failure. And I tell my students, I told them this week exactly what I told you. And I told them exactly when I'm in my office. And you know how many people showed up this week? 0. Most people don't want to be coached. Right. You know, I say to my first-year students, college is not grade 13. The thing that got you through high school is not going to go, you know, playing in high school baseball and playing college baseball and playing pro baseball are 3 different things. So you need a world-class coach. And I know you're a world-class coach. And most world-class coaches are available. Right. You know, and now it's easier than ever. There's something called Zoom. There's something called cell phones.
Sure.
And there's something called, I don't know about you, but if I had a person who was sincerely interested and they couldn't pay me a cent, I would still help them
Sure. I do agree
because
with that.
I want to be around people who are just on fire.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to somebody that's on fire, they don't have to pay me because they're paying me in energy. But most people, I'm sure we talked about this sometime because nobody knows where this came from. The 3%, 27%, 60%, and 10%. So 3% of the people are like the explorers. They're the world-class people. And that's very generous. So 3% of the A+ students, the Melissa Sapios, 27% are the really good, solid A, B+, A- students. 60%, you want me here at 9 and leave at 5? Fine. Don't ask me to come early and stay late. 9 to 5.
Right.
And 10% of the people, let me tell you about a 10%er. I don't think most people are gifted. I think we're all gifted. But I think it's not talent, it's training. Well, I had a kid. He was so funny that the first 5 or 10 minutes of the class, I just had him get up and rant. And he'd just look at a person, make fun of it. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I said, you have to go to comedy clubs in New York. Every Monday night, there are comedy clubs that have trainings. He said, oh, no, I can't afford it. I said, I'll pay for it. And then he said, I don't go to New York. I said, you have to go, so people have the limitations. I don't go to
the
New
excuse
York.
thing, it reminds me a lot of the old story. My neighbor came over to borrow my lawnmower, and I said, I can't give it to you because my cousin Bill is trying out for the Olympic team in California. And he said, what does that got to do with your lawnmower? I said, absolutely nothing. But when you don't want to do something, one excuse is as good as another.
That's a great one.
So it's true. And so now I read a lot about habits, and like you, I'm a student of the game, and how do you get more discipline? Do you have... So the guys, I can't afford it. I'll pay for it. I don't go to Manhattan. Like, how does people get unstuck? Because sometimes it's not it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just being stuck, not understanding, or I have every intention to get up tomorrow morning and make 75 cold calls, but then this happens. At the end of the day, I go, oh crap, I didn't make my 75 cold call. How do you do that?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And I think one of the real secrets we can help people with is something called streaks. You get on a streak. Like action is one thing, but you want momentum. And momentum is action plus emotion. When you put it, when that in the old cartoons, when the little rock rolled down the hill and got bigger and bigger and bigger, it's this huge. And so we want momentum. And I don't think there's anything that's as great as being on a streak. And I mean a streak every day, not once in a while. You run every day. You read every day. You prayed every day. I bet you do your Italian every day.
Every day.
And there's something about not, you don't take Sundays off. It's every single day. And then it becomes unbreakable. And like I'm on a streak with my success hotline. I think it's 13,800 something. The chances of me not doing a message today it's impossible. It would be impossible because I have such momentum behind me. But you don't have to do something for 33 years. I mean, after about 5 or 10 days, then see, the whole thing is, are you a have to or want to? And we're trained in school, unfortunately, be have tos. Oh, you have to do this, have to do that. So a want to beats a have to. Are you a get to or got to? Oh, I got to do it. No, I get to do it. Right. They say that nobody is more motivated than a curious child. The curious child that wants to learn about dinosaurs, you don't have to motivate them. But for the rest of us, we go on a streak. Stephen King, when he's writing a book, 2,500 words a day, every day, every day, every day, every day. And so people could start a streak. So you were saying 75 phone calls, cold calls every day. So you make them today. You have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do it. Then one day the magic will happen. You'll cross the bridge that goes from have to want to. Oh, I want to do it. I don't have to run. I want to run. I don't have to diet. I want to diet. And it will happen if you put yourself on a streak. So I'd like people in this assignment to put in into YouTube Raven Runner. And I find, especially the videos I show about sports, ESPN does the best job. So Raven Runner, and this guy was a country music writer.
Yeah.
And, he was a singer, country music writer, and he wrote this song and he showed it around to some people, and somebody stole the song. He didn't copyright it. And the other guy copyrighted it, sold it, made money off it, and it became a famous song. Well, he is depressed. This was his first breakthrough. So he's walking on the beach, Miami Beach, and he sees these boxers doing their road work. And then, he's down. His body language is saying, help me. He said, hey, buddy, why don't you join us? So he runs 4 miles down, runs 4 miles back. He felt so good that starting on January 1st, 1979, the Raven, his name is Robert Kraft, has run that same 4 miles down, 4 miles back. He's never missed a day. It's been over 50 years. And the good news is he's done it. The good news is he's in great shape. The bad news is he can't go anywhere, because not only does he run, and you'll see in the video that he was having some heart problems. And when it got to be 5 o'clock, he started running in the hospital. The motor went on. But here's the thing, Frank. People come from all over the world to run with him. Yeah. Like my students, sometimes on spring break, they go down to Miami Beach, and they know 5 o'clock. So he's an institution, and people count how many times. You'll see in the video. This is my 237th time with Raven.
Wow.
So that is a streak, and a streak is not something. It's not a prison. It's so much fun to be on a streak. Yeah. So we'll talk about the pillow test. And the pillow test is a test we take every day. When you put your head on the pillow at the end of the day, are you going to say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had? And the more you could say, I'm glad I did, the more your self-esteem is going to go up. So if you're on a streak, I could have the worst day of my life, and if I do my hotline, it's a good day. Because at least I did my hotline. If I did my run, it's a good day. At least I did my run. And one of the things that motivates me to exercise is I'm 79 years old now. And there's going to be a day that I know I won't be able to do it anymore. I'm going, I can't run anymore. I could walk, but I can't. But there's going to be a day I can't walk in. Yeah. So there's going to come a day that we're going to. So we better appreciate it, because I'd give anything to do that.
Well, there's so much I could unpack in that. I think some of the difficulty with folks getting started on things are not seeing results. So I am a brand new salesperson, and I listen to this podcast. I go, you know what? Rob's right. I'm going to get on a streak. And I make 75 phone calls, and I hang in there, and I do it every day next week. Yeah. And I connect with 4 people because voicemail blocked everything, and no one returns my call. How do I get over the discouragement of not seeing, you've seen this with people that are, 100 pounds overweight, and they start working out, and the following week they're down a half a pound. They're like, forget it, I'll just get an ice cream.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if that were myself, what I'd do, and you're my coach, I'd say, Frank, and I'm going to just assume I have no money, like $100 is a big deal. I said, Frank, every day I don't make my 75 phone calls, I'm going to give you $100. Mm-hmm. You have to have a reason why. And so the reason why might be positive because I'm doing well, but you just have to pay your dues. I used to be a wrestling coach. Most people don't win their first match. Most people, you just have to pay your dues. And the thing is, you might not be doing well. So you have to check. You might be putting the effort. You might be working hard, but you're not working smart. But I know you could teach me the skills.
I think, Rob, it's not, it's not like add water and stir.
Yeah.
And instantly I'm successful. So how can you train yourself mentally to see the result that you want to see in the future, even though today that result isn't there? Like, talk about your friend Joel Sickle, right? This is a guy that lost hundreds of pounds, but I can't imagine what it was like after the first week.
Yeah.
not seeing much result, and the pain. Like, how do you keep the end in mind, I guess is my
Well,
question.
do you know what motivated him to start doing this?
Please tell us.
Okay. So Jove is one of our friends. Where's he living now? Missouri, or he's in Missouri. He might be back in Iowa.
Hmm.
Um, but he was an athlete, and one of the things that he was a wrestler. And, when you have to lose weight for wrestling, once you stop wrestling, some people go crazy. Well, I don't know what happened, but I think he was over 600 pounds. But he was a principal of a school, a very smart guy. And one day he's at the beach with his family. And, that takes a lot of courage to weigh 600 pounds and put on a bathing suit.
Yeah.
Well, he wades into the water and he slips and falls. And he could hear the giggles because he had trouble getting up. And, oh, he looks like a beached whale and all that.
Oh,
That was so painful. That was so painful. Just like you have to hit bottom. That was bottom for him.
yeah.
So, one of the things I really, really believe in as a core belief is everything always works out for me. Because of this, something good will happen.
Right.
And, your biggest problem is going to become your biggest possibility. So if you're in sales and you're putting in the time, you're putting the effort, and you have a great coach like Frank and you know the technique, it's a numbers game. I mean, it's only a matter of time. It's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I used to have a guy that I always cite him as an example, John Weislow. And John was the most persistent, hardworking guy.
Mm.
We used to run sales blitzes, and we would bring in the manufacturers to ride with the reps, and they would have 6 or 8 stops a day every day, and no one would ride with John because he'd keep them going till 7 o'clock at night. Like, he just had no quit, and John was not a classic sales personality where he had great convincer strategies and he could persuade people quickly. That wasn't something that he had.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what John did, and I give this example all the time, is he outworked everybody you put next to him. He just out hustled everybody. And while he was doing that, he started to acquire the skills.
Yeah.
And I think that's the process. But believing that, that's where I want to get to, because I read these things, if you want to start running, make sure you leave your running shoes out in the,
Yeah.
by the bed, and your shorts and everything ready, and you're more likely to do it with these visual prompts. And when you're talking about becoming great in sales, when the majority of the income is made in commission versus salary, and you can go get a job at the post office and get the check every week and you'd be fine. So
Well,
the
yeah.
belief that it's going to be 100 times what I could make at the post office, and getting that belief into your belly is the important thing, I think.
Well, another thing is we have to have role models that are so exceptional. Like, what's 75 calls a day? I have a guy, Tom Donnelly, that he might be the best cold caller in the world. He makes 300 cold calls on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and on Saturday he makes 150.
Oh my.
So he told me that, if you give me 6 or 8 hours, I could teach your students everything they have to know about cold calling, but I cannot teach them to make 300 calls. That has to come from the inside out.
That's huge.
Yeah. But he
Right.
does it and he makes a lot of money and he takes trips all over the world and nobody could compete with him. Dan Gable was one of the great American wrestlers of all time.
Yeah.
And he was a state champion. He was a national champion. Not only was he Olympic champion, he was unscored upon in the Olympics. Nobody even scored a point. So, Hamilton, New Jersey, this is right before COVID. He's giving a talk at the high school there on a Tuesday afternoon in early December. So I make my way down through the sleet to Hamilton, New Jersey, and there are about 250, 300 people there because this guy is a living legend. And the sport of wrestling is a living legend. And not only that, he was a coach at Iowa State and he was at the University of Iowa, and he was the most successful coach ever. He was like the John Wooden of wrestling. So After his talk, everybody wanted a selfie. Everybody wanted the Dan Gable shoes or the Dan Gable book autographed. So I waited 2 hours. He signed for more time than he spoke. Wow. So finally, everybody's out of the gym. Dan Gable, the organizers, and I approached Dan. I said, Dan, you don't know me. We're contemporaries. But I came all the way down from North Jersey to ask you a question. How come you won everything and I won nothing? And on the mat, he's an assassin. Off the mat, he's the sweetest guy in the world. Yeah. And he said, and then he starts this weird questioning. Where'd you go to school? And I said, I went to UMass Amherst. And he said, I went to Iowa State. Like, of course you did. I know his whole biography. He said, what time of day did you practice? 4 to 6, 4 to 6:15. He said, yeah, we did too. He said, what did your coach do at the end of practice? Well, towards the end of practice, we did some pretty tough conditioning. He said, yeah, we did too. He said, what did you do after practice? I said, well, to tell you the truth, Dan, I was so exhausted. I crawled back to my locker. I took a shower and I went to get something to eat. He said, that's the difference between us. After practice, I cranked up the heat in the wrestling room. I went back to my locker. I put on my rubber suit, put on a hoodie, put on sweatpants, got my jump rope, and I went back in the wrestling room and I jumped rope until I passed out. Now, when he said jump rope and I passed out, you know how in cartoons you have these little balloons over people's heads? Yeah. So there were 2 balloons over my head. One is Rob Gilbert in the dining hall eating a pork chop, and the other one's Dan Gable training like a maniac. So of course he's an Olympic champion. And you know the thing is, Frank, he never passed out. Right. In the 1972 pre-Olympic issue of Sports Illustrated, it said Dan Gable just might be the best conditioned athlete in the world. Wow. So of course he won and I didn't. Of course he was an Olympic champion. I wasn't. And now that I have that standard, how can I regret that? Because I didn't train like he did. Right. And so the thing is, in sales, it's the same thing. Find a Tom Donnelly, 300 cold calls a day. Now, you don't have to make 300, but he's your Babe Ruth. He's your Dan Gable. And you say, I'm going to get up to him one day. So right now, what I'm doing, we're taping this right when March Madness started. Yeah. And if you saw the brackets, every year I memorize the brackets. I know. And my students say, well, how long did it take you to memorize it? I said, it took until. And I said, well, what's until? I said, I memorized it until I am not going to get up in front of you and embarrass myself. I am going to go over and over. So first of all, I know the memory technique. So I have the technique and I put in the time and there's no problem. Technique plus time equals miracles. Absolutely. But this year I'm doing something different because I don't think I wowed them. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to memorize every game, every score. So by the end, I could write the whole bracket out, all 67 games, and the exact score for each and every game.
That's really cool. Make sure you film that.
Well, yeah, that's a good idea. Probably will.
Have somebody with an iPhone, man.
So to tell you the truth, I've been doing the teams. So I know how to do the teams. Yeah. Basically, what I do is just make up stories, and but I didn't know how to do the scores. Right. So I know this guy that's probably the best memory teacher in the world. His name is Matt DeMeo. So 2 days ago, I called him up. I said, Matt, how much for an hour of your time? He said, $250. I said, and so in 1 hour, he showed me exactly how to memorize the numbers. So now it's not a matter of ability. I know I could do it. It's not a matter of strategy. He taught me. Now it's just a matter of time. Yeah. So one of the things, I think probably the most important thing I ever tell my students about college is not difficult. It's time consuming. Sales is not difficult. It's time consuming. We could take anybody, and I mean anybody listening to this call, and if you come to Montclair, New Jersey, and you live here for a while, we can make you an 80% foul shooter. It's just time. I know the technique. You put in the time, it's going to happen. So, we're not talking about complicated stuff. But here's the problem. We're swimming in the sea of sameness. Like, I don't know what's happened after COVID. My students don't talk. I mean, they don't talk. Right. And so they're swimming in the sea of sameness. I tell them, I said, look, if this were a group interview for a job, I wouldn't hire any of you. Because, Are you kidding me? So they're swimming in the sea of sameness. You can't swim in the sea of sameness.
And,
I mean, you
Rob,
have to find a radical trainer, mentor. You have to find somebody that's nuts. Somebody that's totally nuts.
yeah, but underneath this premise is your belief that you're not lacking anything, you're
That's right.
blocking it. So,
Well, do you agree with that?
when you're saying to me about talking to Matt DeMeo and getting the technique for the memorization, now it's just a matter of time. But that assumes that you're able to do it. And I think that's
Well,
a concept that you bring forth all the time. You can do anything anybody else could do
yeah,
if you
yeah.
know how they did it. Now, this
No,
doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to dunk a basketball like Michael Jordan if I'm 5'4", but I can give an effort. I can have the same mechanics, and so explain that where there's a dividing line when you say you can do anything anybody else could do, but of course there's natural abilities and blah blah blah. So how do you suss that out?
well, in sales, it's just too simple. Let me apologize. I haven't told this story in so long. This might not be a politically correct story. So it's about a kid. He graduated from college, and his parents finally said, after a couple of months of him just hanging out at home, you got to get a job. So he looks in the paper, and there's a job, traveling salesman, selling Bibles. This is back in the 50s. He's a religious guy. He said, this would be a great job for me. There's only one problem. He calls up and he can't show up to the interview because he has a severe stuttering problem. But he knows that he'll be a great salesperson. But he also knows he won't get hired with his stuttering problem. So he sends his best friend. His best friend interviews, gets a job, takes a training, teaches everything to his friend, and his friend goes out on the road. And he's killing it. He's killing it. And finally, after about 3 weeks, the VP in charge of sales says to the president, we got this superstar that came from nowhere. I'm gonna take a week and just hang out with him and see what happens. So he finally got back to the president. He said, boss, this was the most amazing week of my life. The guy we hired who's sending all the sales records is a severe stutterer. I mean severe. And the president's, well, how does he do anything? He said he does the same thing over and over again. Knocks on the door, the man in the house or the woman in the house comes to the door, and he says, ma'am, would you like to buy a Bible? And they take it from him, and he has perfect timing, and he says, oh, would you rather I read it to you? So the point is that we can make everything work for us. We can make Spud Webb and Muggsy Bowes. They won the slam dunk competition, and they were 6'4" and 6'3". So that's the whole thing. Everything could work for you. Absolutely everything could work, and everything's going to work out. So right now, when I'm talking about this in my class, I play the Garth Brooks song, Unanswered Prayers. And I'd like people to watch that. And watch when it just put in Unanswered Prayers lyrics. And it's about Garth goes back to an old high school football game with his wife, and he's happily married. His life is perfect. And who do you think he sees? His old girlfriend. His girlfriend from high school. He used to pray to God, please make her mine. That's all I want from this life. I just want to be with her, be with her. And of course, she broke up with him. He's heartbroken. Then, years later, he meets the love of his life, his soulmate. And now he sees his old girlfriend, and he says, thank God for unanswered prayers. Thank God that. So a lot of times the worst thing becomes the best thing. I flunked out of college. I was humiliated. And now that bonds me with my students. As a matter of fact, I have a $1,000 offer. If you could prove to me that you have worse grades than I had, I'll give you $1,000. But nobody could, because I failed 10 courses.
Wow.
Nowadays you need a 2.0 to graduate. I graduated with a 1.92. Back when I was in school, you could graduate with a 1.8. I graduated in the lower 3% of my high school class. To show you, to show you how unmotivated I was in college. When I was in college, everybody wanted a deferment because of Vietnam. I still flunked out because Vietnam didn't motivate me.
Oh, my Lord. Well, that's interesting, because one of the things I want to ask you is you're 79 years old.
Yes.
And yet you are still studying, figuring, trying to improve, getting better at, like, you want to get better at the memorization. Or I've seen some of the, when we exchange a video about your workout or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? When is enough enough? Like, when do you just go, I'm done? Why do you continue to try to improve at 79 years old?
Um, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Yitzhak Perlman or Pablo Casals, the cellist. And somebody was going to interview him, and he's waiting outside. His wife said, "Well, just sit here," and he's listening to the great cellist practicing. And then when he's free, he'll get the interview. And he's playing great basic scales, like basic scales. And finally, during the interview, he said, "Maestro, when you were practicing, you were playing basic scales. Why?" He said, "I still think I'm improving." I mean, I my biggest fear in my life is I'll wake up and I won't want to teach. I'm kind of strange. I don't have a wife. I don't have children. One of my students said, how many grandchildren do you have? I said, let me tell you something. If you don't have children, you're not going to have grandchildren. So I'm just endlessly interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
And I hope, because I don't know what's going to happen if I lose my interest in this stuff, because I don't have too many oars in the water outside of this.
Right.
So it's not like, I'm multidimensional, but it's worked out so far.
So I want to ask you two things, and I don't want to forget either one, so I'm going to mention them both. One is about the Origins of Success Hotline, how that came about, and how that streak happened for, is it 30 years now or something like that? And the other thing is
33 years.
And after that, because we're talking about streaks, I want you to tell the Mr. D'Amato story.
Okay, that would be, thank you so much. Well, do you agree? I mean, there are two ways of looking at the world. Either world is out to help us or hurt us. Now that you get older, don't you think the world's out to help us?
I do.
I do. Now, people could say, you could point to things, but the thing is, there are two ways of looking at the world. You could have a worm's eye view, and you could just see the crap right around you. But when you get older, you see the bird's eye view, and you say, oh, I was meant to flunk out of school. I was meant to go into the military. I mean, everything works out if you give it time.
Yeah.
They say tragedy plus time equals comedy. Everything works out. And I think this is a universal law that everything works out. And everybody's trying to help us. We might not think so at the time, but everybody's trying to help us. So I'm in my first or second year at Montclair State. And one of my students came up to me and said, Dr. Gilbert, do you know Eric Butterworth? And I said, no, what's in Eric Butterworth? He said, oh, he's a Unity minister. And every morning he has a broadcast on a radio station in New York City, 7 days a week. I mean, I started listening to this guy every single day. I mean, this guy taught me more than I learned in my PhD program. Every single day. He was a great storyteller, and he's all over the internet, Eric Butterworth. And so I don't know when it was. Well, I do know when it was. It was 1979. And I'm teaching a graduate course in sports psychology. And I used to be a wrestling coach, a high school wrestling coach. And I was a maniac coach. We'd never work out 5 days a week. It was either 6 or 7 days a week. I mean, I was the head of residence hall right outside my apartment. I had my own wrestling mats. That's how much of a maniac I was. So I'm teaching a graduate class in sports psychology, and I had the blinding flash of the obvious. I see these people once a week for 2.5 hours. Nothing happens in once a week. So I said, okay, I'm going to put a message on my old-fashioned answering machine with cassette tapes. Remember cassette tapes?
Oh, sure. I remember.
For those of you that don't know, this is a cassette tape, okay?
Of course he has one.
and I started and I said, okay, it was 14 weeks, 7 days a week, 98 days. I'm going to just have the 98 secrets of sports psychology. And I'm just going to do it for this semester so they could listen to someone I'm not with them. Well, by the end of the 14 weeks, I had people calling me from all over the world. And I never stopped doing it. So I never thought I was going to do it
Right.
I was going to do it for 14 weeks. So that's how it started. And one of the most famous stories on Success Hotline is Mr. D'Amato. And every year on his birthday, Mr. D'Amato went to his doctor for a checkup. So he comes in and, take off your clothes. He said, okay, Mr. D'Amato, get dressed, come in my office. And he said, Mr. D'Amato, is this your birthday again? He said, yep, doc. Today's my 100th birthday. He said, Mr. D'Amato, you're 100 years old. I'm half your age, and you're in better shape than I am. Your ticker is better than mine. He said, how do you do this? He said, well, doc, I walk every day. He said, every day? He said, every day without fail. Every day? He said, every day without fail. He said, well, what do you do when it rains out? And Mr. D'Amato said, I put on a raincoat. So that's so deceptively, but the raincoat, it could be any excuse.
The perfect story.
It could be any excuse. Like, what can you do when it's too hot? What do you do when it's no time? What do you do this? You just put on a raincoat. You just do it.
It either is, you used to say all the time, the most important thing is to make the most important thing the most important thing. And that story to me is so telling because it is, I am determined to do this. And as we've said before, desire wins, man. Desire wins all the time. No matter what, it's what takes you from here to there. So, salespeople, there's this, you feel that there's a threat of AI taking over. It's not going to take over. People want to do business with people. People want to trust somebody. They want to know the nuances that they can only get from talking to an experienced person.
Yeah.
And as Rob said, you find somebody who's doing it phenomenally well. When I wrote that book behind me, I interviewed 4 ridiculously successful multi-million-dollar salespeople. I interviewed more, but 4 made in the book, and that's a thread that went through all of them. One of the people who's a super wealthy guy from selling, he said, find somebody that knows, that's already doing it, and latch onto them. And I don't want to take up too much time about me, but I will tell you that when I started as a salesperson, I came out of the United States Navy. I got a job at Western Union Telegraph selling telex machines. And I met a guy. When I went into the office, I said, who's the best guy? And they said, his name is Vincent Giardino. And I said, where is he? Well, he's not here anymore. That's why you have a territory, because they bumped him up to headquarters. Where's headquarters? Upper Saddle River, New Jersey. Great. I call up there. I get a hold of Vinny Giordano. And I said, Vin, can I come and buy you lunch? This is who I am. I'm in your old office. And he said, yeah. And I got up there and I literally said to him, imagine if you were a puppeteer and I were a marionette. Tell me what strings you want to pull for the next year. And I will write down, and everything you say, I will do verbatim. Tell me what you would have done when you started out in me. What would you do every day? Give it to me hour by hour. And the guy, Rob, he said to me, there's existing accounts that no longer do business with us. All over your territory. Now, mind you, I was living in Staten Island. My territory was Suffolk County, Long Island. And I went out there every day. Like Vince said, he said, go visit every single account, do 10 stops a day. So I went out there with all the accounts on green bar paper, that perforated paper, and a Hagstrom map, and drove all over that territory and went to see every client. And the line he gave me, he said, every client that you see, knock on the door and say, hi, my name is Frank. I'm your Western Union Telegraph rep. The client will say, hey, Frank, we're not buying anything. And you're going to reply, that's okay. I'm not selling anything. I'm just here to see how you're doing. So I did what Vin said, and I made Pro Club my first year. And it's not because I was good at selling. I wasn't. It's because I found somebody that knew how to do it extraordinarily well, and then got their direction, and then did what they told me to do.
And that made all the difference in the world.
It's anybody could do it. There were people that were so much more skilled at communicating and being persuasive, and I was carrying the load with me that I hadn't gone to college and all my contemporaries had, and I was less than. I had that imposter syndrome and all the other stuff that we talk about that saps your confidence. But this guy said, if you do these things, it will work out. So I did those things.
Yeah. Well,
You're
let me tell you the
blindly
same
going.
story. At college, if you're a professor, you want to get something called tenure. That means they'll basically keep you forever. So
Right.
I'm coming up to tenure, and the Journal for the State Association for Physical Education and Recreation, they needed an editor. So I said, well, I had no interest in doing it, but I had interest in getting tenure. So for my first edition, I said, if I could interview anybody in the world in our field, who would I want to interview? And the last year, the great John Wooden retired. So I said, I want to interview John Wooden. So I called up UCLA. I asked for the athletic department. Hello, athletic department. Could I be connected with men's basketball? Hello, men's basketball. Yes, I'd like to be put in touch with Coach Wooden, please. Oh, he retired. I said, you have a number? Oh, this is before computers. Yes, yeah. Try this number. I figured I was going to get his agent. Hi, I'd like to speak. A woman answered. Hi, I'd like to speak to Coach Wooden. Oh, Johnny went to the store. He'll be back in 20 minutes. They gave me his home number. I called back in 20 minutes. He spent an hour on the phone with me.
Oh my.
So people are available. They really, really, really are. And if it wasn't Coach Wooden, I'd find somebody else.
Right. Right.
So
People want to help you.
can I tell you a new story?
Please.
Okay. So this is a few days. This is about February 10th or February 11th, and a student comes into my office, and he's talking about he needs some advice, and I notice he's carrying this. I mean, this is exactly what he was carrying because I bought it from him. And I said, "What's this for?" He said, "Oh, that's for my girlfriend for Valentine's Day." I said, is she your girlfriend or is she the girlfriend? He said, oh, no. We're going to get engaged. I'm going to marry her. I said, you're going to give her Hershey's Kisses? So this is not the first time I played this game with a student. So I went to my file cabinet. And I said, look, I want to give you a gift that might change your life. These are called Godiva chocolates, okay? You don't give somebody you want to marry Hershey's Kisses. Hershey's Kisses you eat in the car. Godiva chocolate, I've known a Godiva chocolate for 50 or 60 years. I've never eaten a piece of Godiva chocolate because I give it away. You give it away. So let's look at the difference. Hershey's is made in Hershey's, Pennsylvania. This is made by a machine. This is made by a chocolatier, whatever that is, in Belgium. This has some plastic stuff. This has a ribbon on it and all that. And now look inside. Each one of these chocolates, they have their own little condo. They're specialized.
Right.
This is special. This isn't special.
Just a bag.
You
right.
want Godiva. You don't want Hershey's.
Exactly. That's wonderful.
So. And then I think we want to be Godiva. We don't want to be Hershey's. We don't want to be commonplace. Right. Now, this costs about $5, and this costs $52.50. Of course it does.
Right.
I mean, this is a pound, and this is a pound.
Wow.
So if you just want to be commonplace, if you want to swim in the sea of sameness, fine. But if you want to be Godiva, you have to be special. Right. And I think we do want to be Godiva. We don't want to be Hershey's.
And Rob, that's the answer to selling in the age of AI is you've got to separate yourself. And if you're a pack of Hershey's, you will be replaced by AI. There's no doubt. You are already commoditized.
Yep.
And you're going to be replaced. So you have to get yourself to another place. We're up against the time right now. I want to finish up and talk quick about the hotline. 973-743-4690. That's the number you call, even though it's on auto dial in my phone, and even though I just tell Siri, hey, call Rob Gilbert, I still know the number because it's been 30 years. And I can tell you, if you're listening to this, call that number every single day, and you will get around 3 minutes of something that will inspire you every day, 7 days a week. And it's been going on for over 30 years, and it's just a stunning achievement. And I think, as you've said before, it feels like it does more for you than it did for anybody. But
Absolutely.
it's
It's
an
been the one
amazing
greatest
thing.
thing I ever did in my life.
And it's
I mean,
fantastic to listen to.
you
I feel
know,
like I've gotten so much from that outline. I
yeah,
can't even tell you. Like the salespeople, the millions of clients I visited, and something that came out of my mouth, I realized I was
yeah,
channeling Rob off the hotline, a story, and it inspires me every day.
yeah. Frank, we all consciously or unconsciously have bucket lists. I
Mm.
mean, like you seem like you're a traveler. I'm not a traveler. I
Mm.
mean, my bucket list. I just want to do things better than I've done them before.
Yeah.
I, on my most extreme bucket list, this would never show up. Somebody wrote a book about me in Success Hotline. I
Yes.
mean, I never, ever, ever. And you want to know how good? I didn't write this book. He just took stuff from Success Hotline. Look at all the things. This is my stuff, and these are all the
And you have all these tabs.
these are all the great ideas I got out of my book.
Right?
So,
It is great. And Andrew
so this is
Murata did a
Andrew Murata,
fabulous.
and
And don't you have a book signing coming up on Sunday?
yeah, this Sunday at Bookends Bookstore in Ridgewood. I'm scared to death that nobody's going to show up.
I'm sure somebody will show up. And
Well, I'm sure somebody will, but let me
Andrew's
tell
a
you,
great guy, and
this
he
is a
did a great job.
very interesting thing about AI and stuff like that. So Bookends, for some reason, is a very small bookstore, but they have, Hillary Clinton was there. When Joe Namath was there, people started lining up 12 hours ahead of time.
Wow.
So once I went to the owner, I said, "Who attracts the largest crowd?" He said, two types of people: pro wrestlers and these chefs on TV.
Wow.
They attract the most people. So, this guy, Emerald Lagasse?
Sure.
Yeah. So one day, it's going around the block. And finally, this woman my age buys the book and he's there to sign it. And she says, "Emerald, could you please kiss me?" So he reaches over and kisses her on the cheek. She faints. She passes out. I don't think that's going to happen this Sunday.
No, probably not. All right. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Everybody, make sure you're listening to Success Hotline 973.
Well, could I end with one thing?
Yeah, please.
All you have to do. One of my callers once told me these 3 pieces of advice: make a commitment, make it public, make it happen. And that comes from the great Frank Somma.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to end it here. Everybody, the great Dr. Rob Gilbert.
Ready to take your sales team or event to the next level? Visit franksoma.com to discover how Frank can coach your top performers, deliver a tailored workshop for your team, or captivate your audience with a content-packed keynote at your next event. Frank's best-selling book, B2B is really P2P, is now available on Amazon and Frank's website. Here's a special offer. As a valued listener, mention this podcast when you contact Frank and receive a 10% discount on your first coaching session, keynote, or workshop booking.
That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Selling in the Age of AI. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of the topics we discussed, and of course, to connect with our amazing guests. I have to shout out big love to my production team, Neeks, Angelo, Nico of Digital Presence. You guys rock. If you want your digital presence to explode, check these guys out at digitalpresence.team. And until next time, remember, people can't point and click you. Be the difference maker for your prospects and clients.